If God is truly all-powerful, if he is holy, just, and hates evil, then why is Satan still alive? This question has been around for centuries. It troubles hearts, challenges theologies, and is often avoided precisely because it is so uncomfortable. After all, we are talking about the one who has caused so much pain, destruction, deceit, and death. The very essence of rebellion against the Creator, and yet he continues to act. God could have destroyed it with a single word. He could have stopped the history of evil even before Eden, and yet he didn't. But why? If this question has ever crossed your mind, you are not alone. And today, in this video, we are going to face this doubt head-on, with courage, with faith, and with our eyes on the Word, because the answer is there. Maybe not in the way we would like, but certainly in the way we need. In fact, if you've come this far, it's because, like us, you're looking for deep revelations, not superficial answers. And that's why I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here you'll find content that doesn't shy away from difficult questions, but rather delves into them with faith and understanding. Each video is a spiritual journey, and this is one you won't want to miss. So stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear today could forever change the way you understand God's justice, evil in the world, and even divine love. Before he was called Satan, he was Lucifer, not a monster, not an abstract symbol of evil, but a real creature created by God with glory, beauty, and honor. Lucifer was a cherub, a being of the highest rank, adorned with precious stones, surrounded by light, endowed with wisdom and grace. He was made to reflect the glory of God himself, but inside him, something changed. A thought, a desire, a twisted glow. The beauty that should have drawn him to worship had become the mirror that fueled pride. Lucifer saw himself as magnificent, and he wanted more. He wanted the throne. I wanted worship. I wanted to be like the Most High. This was the beginning of the rebellion. It was not a mistake. It was a choice. The first act of disobedience in the universe did not come from a human being, but from an angel. And with that decision, Lucifer stopped being light and became darkness. He stopped being a servant and became an enemy, and he didn't fall alone. A third of the angels chose to follow him. Beings created to worship began to conspire against the Creator. And so began the first war, not between gods, for God has absolute power, but between light and shadow, between truth and lies, between loyalty and rebellion. But it is important to understand, this war was not a clash between equals. There is a false idea, popularized by films and philosophies, that God and Satan are opposing forces in balance, as if they were fighting for power on a cosmic scale. That's a lie. The Bible is clear. God has no rival. Lucifer was never a match for the Creator. When war broke out in heaven, God didn't need to get his hands dirty. He simply gave the order, and Michael the archangel stood up with the heavenly armies. The battle was intense, but the outcome was already written. The dragon was defeated. The rebellious angels were cast out. Heaven was cleansed. But then the next question arises. If God has already won, why didn't he end it all there? Why didn't he eliminate Satan and his angels once and for all? The answer starts here and goes much deeper. When Satan was cast out of heaven, he did not descend alone. A third of the angels chose rebellion, and they fell with him. But what exactly does this mean? These angels were not destroyed. They did not lose their powers, their abilities, or their spiritual nature. What they lost was their standing before God, their dwelling place in heaven, and the privilege of worship. They were banished, but not blotted out. And here we come to a point that needs to be clarified. Not all evil spirits are the same. The Bible makes a clear and often ignored distinction between fallen angels and demons. Although both act against God's purposes, Their origins and functions are different. The fallen angels are those who have stood before the throne of God, glorious creatures with hierarchy and intelligence who now operate in the shadows. They do not desire human bodies. They do not seek individual possessions. They influence structures, corrupt governments, systems, religions, entire cultures. They act as spiritual princes in heavenly places, as Paul reveals. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. Demons are described in the Bible as impure, disorderly, desperate spirits, the search for bodies. That is why we see Jesus casting out demons from tormented people, like the possessed man in the region of the Gerasenes. When freed, the demons beg Jesus, "Don't send us into the abyss, let us go into the pigs." This scene reveals something profound. Demons need a host to act. They are wanderers. They wander restlessly, looking for a place to live. So while the demons torment individuals, the fallen angels manipulate larger structures. They are strategists. And who commands them all? Satan, a being who, even defeated, still exercises authority among his people. But why would God allow this? The answer starts with a non-negotiable principle. Spirits don't die like us. Jesus said, God is spirit. And when he created spiritual beings like angels, he endowed them with eternity. They do not have physical bodies, and so they cannot be destroyed like a human being is. They cannot simply cease to exist. This is an important key to understanding why Satan and the fallen angels are still active. They were created with a nature that transcends time and matter, and more than that, God is just, and his justice does not act without judgment. Even in the face of rebellion he weigheth, the judge at the right time, and he never acts outside of his perfect justice. Yes, the judgment has already been set, their fate has already been determined, but God does not act as we do, in haste or impulsively. He is not a hasty judge. He is the just judge, one who reveals the truth before all before executing the sentence. And here comes an even deeper principle. God's purpose is not just to punish, it's reveal. Every action of Satan, every strategy of evil, every attempt to destroy what God has created, all of these become, in the Lord's hands, proof against the enemy. Not because God needs evidence, but because the Lord needs the evidence. Whole universe needs to testify to the Creator's justice. God could have ended it all in an instant. But if he did, heaven and earth would not understand the depth of God's love, nor the gravity of sin, nor the beauty of redemption. That's why he waits. That's why he allows it. That is why, even though he is the absolute Lord, he does not impose the end without first revealing the truth in its entirety. This may still seem harsh. You may be thinking, but why did God create Satan if he already knew he would rebel? The answer lies in the next step of this story, and it is linked to a sacred gift that he does not give up, even in the face of risk, free will. This is the bridge that connects the enemy's downfall with our own existence. What you will see in the next block is perhaps one of the greatest revelations about God's eternal plan, and also the explanation that can transform the way you see freedom, evil, and God's own love. If God knew that Lucifer would rebel, why did he create him? This question echoes not only in the pages of theology, but in the heart of every human being who has ever faced pain, betrayal, or injustice. Because deep down, it is not just about Satan, it is about us, about the freedom we have, about why evil exists, about why the Creator who knows everything still allows creatures to choose the wrong path. And the answer is deeper than many imagine, because without freedom, there is no love. Free will is not a technicality of creation, it is the essence of a real relationship with God. He did not want us to be robots. He did not program us as machines that only obey commands. He formed us in His image, and that includes the freedom to choose, the ability to say yes or no, to love or reject. If there were no choice, there would be no trust. There would be no fellowship. There would be no true faithfulness. It would all be disguised manipulation. But God did not want servants who obey out of fear. He wanted children who love by decision, and so free will was given even to the angels. Lucifer, when he was still light, had that choice, and he chose vanity, exaltation, rebellion. He was not deceived, he was not forced, he simply chose. Do you realize the depth of this? God created a being with enough freedom to reject him, and yet he created him. Why? Because true love takes risks, and God, being love, does not shy away from these risks. Many people think that the existence of evil is proof against God, but in reality, it is proof of His greatness. A weak God would eliminate any opposition at the first moment, but a sovereign God allows even evil to exist, knowing that in the end, everything will be redeemed and transformed. And this is where we get to the heart of this journey. If God had destroyed Satan immediately, what would have been taught? What would the angels who remained faithful have learned? And we human beings, who live in a world where we have to decide between light and darkness, what would we understand about the character of God? Destroying the enemy instantly would be convenient, but it would not create children. It would generate fear, but not faith. It would generate silence, but not transformation. Therefore, God wait. He did not revoke free will, even after the rebellion. He did not take away creation's right to choose, because to give that up would be to give up love. And God will never deny His own essence, but don't confuse patience with absence. God knows inactive, Henwa indifferent. He is working in silence, like the potter shaping the vessel, like the Father. Waiting for the prodigal son, like the judge preparing the court where everything will be revealed. In fact, think about it. How have you grown more spiritually? In the moments when everything went well, or in those when you had to decide between trusting or giving up, between forgiving or hurting, between praying or grumbling? Free will is not just the right to choose, it is the soil in which God plants purpose, faith, and character. Even temptations, yes, even those brought by the enemy himself, are ultimately tools that reveal to us who we belong. Jesus showed this. In the wilderness, right after his baptism, he was led by the Spirit to be tempted. Yes, led by the Spirit. And there, face to face with Satan, the Son of God faced hunger, power, glory, and did not give in. He responded with the word. He resisted. He overcame. Now stop and think. If God only wanted to eliminate evil, why allow this encounter? Why? Temptation was not a mistake in the plan. It was part of the process. It was the test that validated purity. It was the proof that Jesus was worthy, not only because he was the Son, but because he was obedient to the end. And that is a lesson for us. God doesn't want to keep you away from evil with just walls. He wants to form in you a heart that do not wish evil, who chooses the light even when darkness seduces, who resists out of conviction, not obligation, who loves because he understands the price of love. That's why he didn't destroy Satan in the beginning. Because there is something greater than the elimination of evil, resilience of evil, transformation, the revelation of the glory of God in fragile vessels like us, a glory that is not born of fear, but of faith. And yes, that means that even the enemy serves a purpose, even if it doesn't mean to. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next section, how God, in his absolute sovereignty, transforms even the devil's rebellion into part of the redemptive plan. Get ready. What you're about to see is as surprising as it is powerful. It may seem absurd at first glance, even uncomfortable. But what if, in the end, the enemy of God, the one who most opposes good, is, even without realizing it, fulfilling part of the eternal plan? Not because God approves or accepts evil, but because he is so sovereign that even evil is transformed into a setting for his glory. That's exactly what happened to Jesus. Soon after being baptized, the Son of God was led by the Spirit himself into the desert. 40 days without food, 40 nights without comfort, vulnerable in body, but unbeatable in soul. And there before him Satan appears, with offers, with traps, with poisoned promises. Turn these stones into bread, throw yourself from the top of the temple, bow down before me. Each proposal was an attempt to divert Jesus from his mission, but also each temptation exposed something precious, that Jesus was worthy, that he would not be overcome by hunger, nor by pride, nor by ambition, that no earthly glory would seduce him. He responded with the word. He stood firm. He came out of the wilderness, not only as the Lamb who takes away the sin of the world, but as the Lamb who had been tested. The one who could overcome the cross, because he had already overcome the enemy in the silence of temptation. Do you realize? The devil wanted to sabotage it, but it ended up being the stage for the manifestation of the Son's faithfulness. And that wasn't the only time. At the end of Jesus' ministry, there was Satan again, this time not in the desert, but in the heart of one of the 12, Judas. The one who walked with the Master, who heard every teaching, who saw the miracles, who broke the bread, and yet he betrayed him. The gospel is clear. Then Satan entered into Judas, and Judas went and sold the Son of Man for 30 pieces of silver. Stop for a second and think, if there had been no betrayal, would there have been a cross? If no one had handed Jesus over, would he have been arrested? And without the cross, would there have been redemption? Consider the paradox. Satan thought he was winning, but he was only hastening God's victory. What he planned as destruction became the instrument of the greatest salvation in history. The cross he thought was the end was the beginning of everything. This is why Paul declares, if the rulers of this world had known, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. God's sovereignty is so great that even the enemy ends up serving the eternal purpose. This does not make Satan a faithful servant. It makes him an enemy, defeated, whose very wickedness is used as a bridge to grace, as a fire that purifies, as a test that reveals who we are and who God is. And that goes for your life too. How many times have you gone through moments when everything seemed lost? Betrayals, disappointments, dark nights of the soul, situations that, at the time, seemed unfair, cruel, even unthinkable. But then, with time, you saw that God was there, silent but present, hidden but acting. Nothing the enemy does is beyond the Lord's reach. Nothing. When Joseph was sold by his brothers, he could have wallowed in grief. But years later, when he met them again, he said, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." This is the mark of divine sovereignty. Not only does he overcome evil, but he also overcomes evil to use evil without becoming part of it. And here is the great truth. Satan is alive, but he is not in control. He acts, but with limits. He attacks, but only where God allows. He tries, but always with the leash of his hand, attached to the Creator. Do you remember good? Satan wanted to destroy that righteous man, but he had to ask for permission, and even after causing loss, pain, illness, it could not erase Job's faith. This is not a war between equals. This is a public display of who always had control. So, why hasn't God destroyed the enemy yet? Because there are still lessons being taught, because there are still hearts being shaped, because there is still glory being revealed even in the deserts of the soul, because God does not want a creation that obeys him out of fear. He wants children who love him by choice, who resist evil not because they are forced to, but because understood. And in the meantime, the time of justice approaches. The judge is already at the door. The court is already prepared. And now let us contemplate what the Bible reveals about the final judgment, Satan's fate, and why everything God started, he will finish with perfection, justice, and glory. So far we have walked through the origins of rebellion, through God's patience, through the freedom he preserved even in the face of betrayal. And we have seen how, even in silence, he never lost control. But now we come to the final part. The point where everything converges, because no matter how much God waits, no matter how much he extends mercy, judgment will come, and it won't be symbolic. It will be real, visible, indisputable. The word says there will be a throne, the great white throne, before which all beings, human and spiritual, will appear. The scriptures state that books will be opened, that each one will be judged according to his deeds, that nothing will be hidden, that everything will be revealed. And there on that day Satan will be judged, the one who divided the heavens, the one who deceived nations, the one who destroyed families, the one who poisoned hearts, the one who tried to kill the plan of salvation and failed. He will be confronted not only with his actions, but with the living proof of the failure of his plan. Millions and millions of people who, despite his efforts, remained faithful to God. People like you, like me, who fought, who fell but got up, who cried but believed, who were hurt but didn't give up. Your endurance, your faithfulness, your love for God, all of this will be a witness against him that day. Satan will be condemned. Along with him, the angels who followed him, and all who chose darkness over light, not for lack of chance, not for lack of warning, but for willful rejection of the truth. The Bible states that these beings will be thrown into the lake of fire, prepared not for men, but for the devil and his angels. This is their destiny, a place where God's presence does not shine, where there's no more room for rebellion, for pride, for destruction. But here is the most glorious point of all, that the end will not be just punishment. It will be restoration, because God doesn't just want to eliminate evil. He wants to restore good in all its fullness. He wants to fix what has been broken. He wants to heal the wounds of creation. He wants to wipe away the tears of those who have waited for him. He wants to dwell among us, as was always the plan. That is why Revelation ends with promise, not fear. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. And there will be no more death, neither mourning nor crying, neither will there be any more pain. Satan will be forgotten. His memory will no longer be needed, for evil will be defeated, not only with force, but with redemption. And you are part of this story. Every time you choose good when everything seems dark, every time you say yes to God when the whole world is pressuring you to say no, every prayer said in silence, every unseen tear, every step of faith you took even though you didn't know what was coming, all of this is being counted. Nothing is in vain. The question we opened up at the beginning, why didn't God destroy Satan, took us down a surprising path. And now, perhaps, the answer has changed in your mind, because God did not destroy the enemy immediately, because he was building something much greater, a family of children who love him by decision, a kingdom that reflects his justice and grace. Story where love wins, not by force but by fidelity, and this story doesn't end with evil winning. It ends with King returning, with the heavens opened, with the trumpet sounding, with Jesus, the Lamb and the Lion, coming to judge, restore, and reign forever. If you believe this, if this message spoke to your heart, leave an amen in the comments. Share this video with anyone who is facing doubts, crises, or spiritual struggles. Maybe this is exactly what someone close to you needs to hear. And if you want to continue diving into revelations like this, don't shy away from difficult questions, but face them with the truth of the Word. Subscribe to the channel. We're praying for you, and we want to walk together until the end. And if you haven't seen it yet, click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. The complete story of Lucifer's fall, from light to darkness. This content will have a profound impact on you and complete everything we've learned today. May the Lord bless you, strengthen you, and keep you until the great day. The victory is already written, and her name is Jesus. Amen.